Sleepy Sheepy here. Today I wanted to make a video talking about vortexing. So this is a phrase you might have heard in the context of PvP, and it usually involves maintaining priority and damage continuously through a number of predictive and reactive attacks. So what this ends up looking like is something like this. So I'll be providing the input information on screen while we look at this in slow motion. And this isn't going to be like the perfect recipe for vortexing an opponent. You really have to kind of make some guesses about how they're going to play. But when this does all land, it's incredibly damaging, and it's a great way to just flawless your opponent because they really don't have any opportunity to fight back if you get it right. When you get vortexed, you usually know it, and it usually feels terrible because whatever you try to do, you're not able to kind of avoid the incoming damage, and it just feels like your opponent is completely reading your every move and punishing you for it, which is essentially what it is. Vortexing was very common with the Cestus before patch 1.09 with the uncharged heavy attack that could oftentimes catch you after you roll or just be delivered immediately before you roll, and it really felt like you had nothing to do and there was no way out of it. The Shunter or the Serpent Hunter is also a very common vortexing weapon just because you're able to deliver a crouch poke that is just so fast, and if the opponent delays their attacks when you roll and then crouch pokes you when you don't roll immediately, it can really just catch you multiple times in a row and result in tons and tons of damage. So recently I've been using the curved greatsword with an offhand dagger. This setup I have found has great vortexing potential where you often are able to land a light attack followed up by a slice from the off dagger and then roll catch your opponent with another slice with the curved greatsword. And then if you time it correctly, you can sometimes come out and grab a running heavy attack after they roll again. So there's just a ton of damage potential, and we'll see in a couple clips here just what this might look like. Jumping into our first duel, we have a player with the gold emblem running dual anchors, and while this setup isn't super meta or anything, it can deliver a ton of damage, and we can expect them to go for jumping attacks. So our goal is going to be to catch them out of the air with a jumping attack and then maintain priority for as long as possible. So eventually we will be able to catch them with a running attack out of the air and then just keep delivering a mix-up of a number of different hits. And we do so much damage, and we're able to put ourselves in a position where all we need is one more hit from the misericord, and we can kind of just spam L1 until they get close enough to get hit with that. So next up we have a player that's running Morgoth's curved sword, and we're able to punish their kind of desire to use that Ash of War with just a number of staggering attacks. And so that's another benefit of the curved greatsword is you have this staggering attack, and then you have the non-staggering attack oftentimes associated with the misericord. And that gives you really good timing and really good synergy between the two attacks, where if somebody gets roll caught, they'll likely want to delay their next roll. So that means you can usually deliver 2 hits with the curved greatsword, and then if you think they're going to wait a very short amount of time but then roll to avoid, that follow-up curved greatsword attack, then you can do some chip damage with the misericord. And once that chip damage is delivered, they usually roll after that, and it gives you great timing to follow that up with another light attack on the curved greatsword. So not all of these are going to, result in immediate flawlesses with a continuous chain of attacks that, do 2000 HP or something, but they are always going to, just demonstrate the different types of attacks you might be able to deliver and the different mix-ups and kind of timings that you might look for to really flawless your opponent pretty easily. So here's a good one here. We have a running attack, we have a crouching attack, which does have different timing than, say, a normal light attack. We follow that up with a light attack and then another light attack with the misericord and the curved greatsword, and then another curved greatsword light attack followed up by a light attack with the misericord. And it really just keeps your opponent guessing every single time, and if you can kind of start predicting what they're going to be doing ahead of time, and you really just kind of like play this play style for a little while, you'll gradually get to feel just the common timings. And there were a lot of players that absolutely did not get vortexed by this, where they would get hit the first time and then either delay their roll long enough or roll out immediately and not get hit by the misericord, or they would do something like use quick step. So we'll see somebody using quick step and how the timings actually work out quite well when you have somebody trying to maintain aggression. So you might miss with the off dagger, but you'll still deliver that light attack when they finish their quick step or bloodhound step. So really just a nice tool there to have in your belt. And it is a good way to get away if you are using quick step or bloodhound step, but it's not going to be a good way to maintain aggression when you have kind of these varied attack timings where, you know, your opponent may end up in a position where they are, you know, attacking right after you finish your quick step. So that's something we're going to be, you know, appreciating about these particular mix-ups, and the fact that you really don't have an opportunity to get good priority when you're facing somebody that is trying to vortex you and has the timings down pretty effectively. So this last duel isn't really going to have too many vortex in it. It's more just a, you know, a G9 lookalike here with the frostbitten off lance and then the main lance with quick step, but it does just demonstrate how strong this particular setup can be if you space appropriately and you avoid, you know, the incoming vortex that can come with dual lances. You may be able to come out on top against a strong setup and really deliver, you know, the necessary chip damage with your weapons to just get a W against one of the strongest setups in the game. One thing I also wanted to mention is how you can potentially avoid getting vortex. So one way to do it is to actually escape the vortex, which means rolling at a time when your opponent doesn't think that you will. So obviously this is kind of difficult, and you have to know and understand the common attack times associated with a given weapon. And really there's no better way to do that than to actually use that weapon yourself. So if you're able to vortex somebody else, then you'll be in a great spot to predict when those attacks are going to be coming and when you actually have a safe moment to roll. Another thing you can do potentially is going to be to block. So blocking even with a weapon like, you know, something with not a ton of physical damage negation is still going to be very helpful, just because it will give you an opportunity to avoid a stagger and potentially roll out and reset back to neutral. And really, if you're able to get out of that vortex as quickly as possible and reset back to neutral as quickly as possible, you'll be in a much better position to have a fight that feels a little bit more normal, where you don't feel like you're getting sucked in and just hit with so many multiple attacks that you really can't do anything. That pretty much covers everything that I wanted to say about vortexing. And I know this was a shorter video, but I just thought it was something that made sense to talk about in a little bit more detail, and in a game that doesn't really have true combos. I mean, there are some true combos, but I'm not really sure how intentional they are, and this definitely isn't the type of game like Dark Souls 3 where every hit guaranteed a true combo. So being able to vortex your opponent is really going to catch them off guard and bring your PvP play to kind of the next level. So if you can incorporate that, it's going to be really beneficial, and you'll see, especially in arenas where, you know, there's not too much going on. It's not like an invasion where you're dealing with multiple opponents. You have the time and the space to potentially vortex your opponent and really come out with very quick Ws that are a good demonstration of skill. Like, it's not easy to vortex somebody, but if you take the time to learn how to do it, it is very rewarding. That's pretty much everything that I wanted to say. If you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I'd definitely appreciate it. But yeah, I hope you have a good one.